Welcome to the Embers of Insight webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Roy Veraveles, and I am the Science Coordinator for the Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange, and I'll be moderating this webinar today. So just a reminder to everyone that this webinar will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channels. So a little bit of background about the Embers of Insight. So these webinars are produced through a collaboration between the Great Plains Fire Science Exchange and the Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange. So these organizations are continuously sharing information, very important information, and supporting fire practitioners from all backgrounds, whether they are landowners, communities, conservation agencies, to help them to make informed decisions about using fire as a land management tool. So that being said, I would like to next introduce Lori Bamerlin from the Great Plains. Lori, would you like to say hi to everyone?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Bamerlin from the Great Plains Fire Science Exchange. I'm the outreach coordinator, and I'll be monitoring chat and helping answer some questions and put in some helpful links.
Amazing. Thanks, Lori. So before I introduce today's speaker, I will go over some general guidelines. First, for everyone, please keep your microphones off. You are welcome to keep your video on or off, whatever you are feel most comfortable with. For questions, please, Lori already mentioned this, but share those questions in the chat box or unmute yourself. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask the question directly to John. Lori will be monitoring the chat, as she said, and be able to bring some of the questions to John later. Once you log off after the webinar today, you will be invited to complete a short optional anonymous feedback survey. So that will help us to improve for webinars in the future. With those items covered, and we're going to introduce our speaker today, John Weir. So John is a senior extension specialist at the Department of Natural Resources Ecology and Management at Oklahoma State University. He has over 35 years of experience in prescribed fire and also research across the Great Plains. And he has conducted more than 1,500 prescribed fires and helped establish over 70 prescribed burn associations. So he has a lot of experience. We're lucky to have John speaking today. With that being said, John will be presenting today about what are prescribed burn associations exactly and how landowners effectively apply fire to the land. So welcome, joining with a virtual applause. And John, you can take over now. You are welcome to share your screen now.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll get sharing my screen here, and we will get going. And I'll be glad to answer any questions or anything as people have. So everybody see that all right? Yep. All right.
Yeah.
So again, they asked me to talk about prescribed burn associations. Have a lot of experience with forming prescribed burn associations and working with them. Started working with them in 1997. We formed our first one then back at that time. And again, since then, I've helped form quite a few. Actually, the newest one was just last Saturday. I helped form one in Southeast Oklahoma. So get a lot of work with them and getting to see that. So what I want to do is kind of go over today is talk about, what really is a burn association, what are the hurdles, what things are going on, and again, what makes the prescribed burn association model work with doing that. And really and truly, probably what it does is what it says at the bottom of the screen there, and that's neighbors helping neighbors. That's what makes PBA model work and to get that done. And that's really and truly what it really is just the old-fashioned neighbor helping neighbor model and getting that going. It's just with fire and doing that. So, so with that, if you look at it, and talking to people, and again, this is talking to people all across the U.S., but also, again, I've visited Canada and got to visit with people up there, and we got to, imagine that we all have the same problems, the same issues and things that. So if you look at it, there's four main reasons why most people don't burn. And number one is liability, pretty much, and that's nationwide. As you look at it, and it's that fear of liability. They think that you're going to get sued, you're going to lose the ranch, and that kind of stuff. Secondly, is most people again don't think they just don't have enough knowledge or experience with fire. And again, that's just human nature. We're kind of shy, or we're kind of wary of the unknown. We just don't know for sure how to do it. We're not sure about the impacts of fire and really enough about it. And so that's one of the big second ones. And then you go into, I'd like to burn, but I don't have enough people to help. A lot of times the kids have moved away. There's not as many folks out here on the land as there used to be, enough people to help. And within that same token, I just don't have enough equipment and to get that done. And I want it to be a safe burn and get all that stuff done. So the question gets to be then is, how do you overcome these obstacles? There are a few ways to overcome liability. The biggest way to over that, unfortunately, that most people use is that they use what's called risk avoidance. They just avoid it altogether and don't burn. Well, that don't solve any problems. So, how can you do it? Well, one way is insurance, possibly. Here in the U.S., that most farm and ranch liability insurance policies do cover damages from escape fires. So that's one of those things. Again, I encourage everybody to talk to their agent, read their policy to understand that, to see exactly to what extent there is coverage and things like that with it. To gain knowledge and experience, you can attend workshops and different things. Sometimes there's plenty of those around, but again, just sitting listening to people talk and stuff, it's kind of difficult to really get that knowledge. Most of the time, most of us, we're hands-on learners, and so the more that we could get out and actually burn, we can learn a whole lot more. But to do that, and to address the labor issues, yeah, we can hire people to help us. But again, when you go to hire people, how much experience with fire do they have? You're hiring somebody to help, but again, they may have just as much experience with fire as you do, which is very limited. And doing that, and that just doesn't really seem to help, do that. And then, the equipment issue is, yeah, we can go out and buy equipment. But as you start to buy equipment, you're like, man, this is getting expensive. I thought burning was economical and, feasible within that. This equipment's getting expensive. And so, you know, does that answer or solve our problems? And typically it doesn't, So, the thing to look at is how do you really do that? And prescribed burn associations, those are the answers, and it's been done that, or it's been proven over time now that this is a proven way to do it. One of the biggest things about managing that risk or liability, there's a difference between risk and liability. Liability is what the law states that you are liable for, is what, if there are damages incurred from something, this is what has liability. The risk is just the percentage or the chance of you becoming liable over something. So, if we can reduce risk, we can reduce liability. And so, so how do you manage that risk? And one of the biggest ways that you manage risk on a fire, especially with a burn association, is you address the other reasons. Those other three reasons why you don't burn is one of the biggest things is we start to attend more burns that our neighbors around us are burning. So we start to get more and more experience over time. And so as a group of people that burn together gain experience, they become more effective, they become safer, and things that go along. And so that helps mitigate a lot of risk real quick. Answer the labor issue by neighbors helping neighbors. That's a big part of it. So again, we have more people on our burn because we're gaining our neighbors to help each other. And then we start to pool our equipment and our resources. Not everybody, in the area may have spray unit to help, with water for suppression. Not everybody may have a drip torch. Not everybody may have a way to make a good fire break or something that within that. But as a collective group of those neighbors, everybody, there's all that equipment pooled together in one area, but so we can pool it and to help each other out. And so that makes the burn associations more effective. And then the other thing is property lines become less important too. Because if you look at it, the property boundaries are what keep everybody limiting what everybody does on burning because they're worried about that fire crossing the property line and getting on the neighbors. Well, if you start talking to your neighbors and talking about fire, a lot of times the neighbors are going, yeah, I'd like to burn too. And so if you can pool larger tracts of land
You
together,
doing anything, Jasper?
hello? Yep. You can pool more blocks of land together. It makes them safer. Larger burns are safer and easier to conduct than small ones. Also, you can use more natural breaks, burn from one road to another road. It may entail burning across three different property lines. But again, if you can get everybody in agreement, that makes that burn cheaper. It makes it more attainable and it reduces a lot of risk because we're not having to worry about that. And then also, the property issue, that risk becomes less and less because a lot of times, again, your neighbors are helping you. And if the fire happens to slop over on the neighbors a little bit, they're like, no big deal. It could happen to me too, as well. And so that's the good part about how you manage that risk with a burn association and getting that done. And it answers all those questions that we have about why we just don't use fire. And so, how do you start one? That's always the biggest issue. And the easiest way to do it again is what you want to do is you want to assemble a group of interested citizens, folks in that area. And again, these are the landowners, uh, leases, owners, also any agency folks that need to be involved that have possibility of they may have some expertise, they may have equipment, they may have funding that may be available. Again, those key players, or there's just a lot of different people that can be involved, and it can be a community deal. Again, you need to pick a leader, someone to lead it. Typically, what we see is that most of the time it's landowners. It needs to be landowner led because this is up to them. And doing that, and then the next thing to do is to set some goals and set an area to work in. Again, down here in the States, a lot of times we go by counties, and so a lot of the burn associations are set up by a county or that, kind of that little area within that, or a multiple counties, trying to get them down to, a manageable size. But again, setting goals and setting that area to work in. And then the biggest thing is going out and accomplishing a task. And that task is typically getting some fire on the ground so people can overcome, that problem. A lot of times what I analogy I use a lot of times, what I see with people new to fire is they want to burn, but they have all these hesitations, they have all these fears, and they're like that person that's standing on the edge of a cliff and they're supposed to take a step off. And to them, that next step looks like it's a long ways down there and it's really going to hurt. But what they don't see is the next step is really not that far. All you got to do is just step. And so that's a big thing to do, is to get that and to get out there and accomplish that task and get things done. And it makes a big difference on getting that done within that. Some of the guidelines that again have been used over time, again, just simple guidelines. And that's the thing that I want to emphasize too, is there is no set rules, there's no set guidelines, there's no set anything on how a burn association functions. What I always tell people is do what makes it best for your community. For example, I've got burn associations here in Oklahoma that I've worked with that are very stickler. They have a lot of they have a lot of paperwork. They've gone through with, they have a lot of written guidelines, and they follow their guidelines and do that, and that's fine. It works for them and get them done. I have other burn associations that have no written guidelines. They have nothing. I don't think they have anything written down on paper. It's just kind of a verbal agreement with everybody that does that. And I think if you made them write something down, they'd quit because it's just not for them. But that's what works. And these guys get a lot of stuff burned. They do a lot of good work, and man, just get after it. And so that's the thing. There's no set way. There's no set guidelines. Do what works best for the people in your PBA and your community to get things done. That's the biggest thing. And again, it shouldn't be a regimented thing. People should feel comfortable and feel free to work with it. But again, you want to make sure that people are safe and that the fires are safely conducted. So that's where your trade-off is. But going back to these guidelines, these are just some simple guidelines that we started out with years ago. Again, you may want to elect officers. Just a simple president, vice president, secretary, and or treasurer. Uh, some people have elected to go with a kind of a board of directors type of that if multiple counties or areas may be involved, so that way everybody feels that there's equal representation within that. It just depends. Again, it depends on, what you feel comfortable with, what people are used to, and what they would like to see. There's also, again, most all PBAs have dues that are collected annually. They're anywhere from $25 to $50, and I think even there may be some that are up to $100 a year. And again, this money goes into the PBA account, and that's used to help maintain equipment that the PBA may have. They use it to pay for annual meetings, to buy, if they have an annual meeting, may buy a meal for everybody that's attending. So again, it's used for PBA type stuff and to do that. Typically, most of the PBAs have some type of annual meeting. A lot of times they usually do it right before the burn season kicks off, so everybody can get together, get reacquainted, also bring in their the burns that they have planned for the next year so they can get a list together and see what they've got to do and what they're trying to get done, and everybody can visit with that. They require all PBAs, most all of them require that a burn plan be written for every burn unit that they're doing. Here in Oklahoma, we don't have our laws. We don't have to have written fire plans or anything. Kansas is that way. A lot of states don't have to have written fire plans. It's not a law, but they do, just kind of require it as the guidelines for the Burn Association. Again, that just helps show due diligence and show the thought process. Again, as for the liability issue, liability still rests on the landowner. It's their property, it's their fire. They're the one receiving the benefit of the action. The Burn Association is not there to conduct the burn. They're not a contract association, anything like that. It's just a organization of people that are getting educated about fire, and they're just there to help their neighbors out. And so again, so that liability still rests on that. Again, every burn unit should have adequate fire breaks. And again, it's up to the landowner to prepare those or get them prepared, whatever they need to do. Also, it's good to possibly have a guideline that says we're going to have a certain number of personnel on each burn to be considered a PBA burn. This is our PBA. We have to have at least 3 people or 4 people on a burn to be considered a PBA burn. That way, it just keeps somebody from saying, "Hey, I'm a member of the PBA," and they go out and strike a match and walk off and leave it, and it causes problems. And they go, "Oh, well, that guy's a PBA member." No, that was not a PBA burn. They were not following what our guidelines are about and about what we do. It's also good to maybe maintain an equipment list of equipment that the Burn Association has, and then what might be available from that other people may have. And some people may, if they can't make the burn to help, they'll be glad to loan it out so somebody can go pick it up, things like that. And then the final thing is some kind of burn participation. We thought about this a long time ago, and we really not had a lot of problems with it. But our thoughts were that what about those people that may want to join the PBA, get their property burned, and then you never see them again? They kind of take advantage of that, of this system and this model. But typically, we don't see that. Most people that join are in for it for the long haul and the biggest part of it. There's a few, but again, looking at it a lot of times is, hey, before we ever burn your place, you need to come at least attend one or two burns so you can know what's going on, see what's going on. And a lot of times that's a good thing. Now, starting out, that's always a lot of times difficult because nobody's had any burn experience. So, you'll have to kind of waive that kind of stuff at first. But again, you just have to work around things as they show up and as things go on. As for goals and objectives, again, one of the burn associations in Texas wrote these years ago, and everybody just kind of uses the same ones. They're great. They did a great job writing them. And, that's the goals and objective are we're out here to share equipment, to share labor, to train the membership. And the big thing is, you want to foster good relations between neighbors within the community in regards to the use of prescribed fire, and that's a big part of it. Again, you're getting fire and you're getting the benefit as an individual on your land, but also there are benefits within the community that these fires provide. And again, also it's something that the community sees and sees what's going on, and it can make a huge difference within that community and stuff, especially teaching people and learning people on, educating them on, the importance of fire and the benefits that you can see of fire within that community of what you've got on that. Again, as you form, a group, an organization, a lot of times too, there's funding, there's grants, there's opportunity for money out there. Whereas an individual, as an individual landowner, you would not be privy to any kind of this stuff. But as a group, an organized group, a lot of times the agencies and NGOs and different things that are out there are looking for ways to benefit, to manage habitat, or to do things, and they can see that. And here, what we've seen is the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, have been a great partner, providing grants and funding for stuff. Our state wildlife department has been a big benefactor to our burn associations here, conservation districts, the National Wild Turkey Federation, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever are huge supporters of prescribed fire. Throughout, also we have our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Partners Program, which works with private landowners, have been a huge benefactor and sponsor of a lot of the work of PBAs here in Oklahoma. The Nature Conservancy has also been a big part. There's a lot of others that are out there on doing that. And so again, that funding can go to help for equipment and parts of it. One of the biggest things that I see as a benefit to burn associations is to get just a little bit of equipment in their hands so that they've got some good equipment to start working with. And that goes a long ways just to jumpstart and to get things going. That way they're not having to sit there and try to figure out where they're going to get this equipment from and do that. A lot of times it's some burn trailers. That way, when we do that, our burn trailers, we give every new burn association a burn trailer. It's just a 6-foot by 10-foot enclosed cargo trailer. And in that, we put drip torches, hand tools like rakes, swatters, in that, road signs, slip-on spray units that'll fit in side-by-sides, radios, leaf blowers, fuel cans, weather instruments, different things. So they have these burn trailers that they can set up and use, but it's also equipped, and that way all that equipment's in one spot. They can store it wherever they need to store it at. And then on the day or the day before a burn they got planned, that landowner can go pick that trailer up, pull it to their house, their property, and it'll be there with all that equipment and it's ready to go within that. So that's been a huge thing of getting and funding. And we've been able to do those pretty reasonable. I used to could get them done for less than $5,000 a trailer, but it's with prices last several years and keep going up and stuff. We're looking at about $7,500 to get a trailer started up. So, we don't do it real fancy and stuff, and we don't fix the insides up for them. That we just let each PBA do their own thing with what they want to do on that. here we have a lot of rural or volunteer fire departments. They can be beneficial to our PBAs. Again, they could add additional manpower, they could add additional equipment. There may be availability where PBA members could rent the equipment, or they can, for a small fee, have the local fire department come out and set and doing that. So again, it also is a benefit to the volunteer fire department because again, it provides a training opportunity for those folks to do that, help them to understand fire behavior. They could help get some money from different things. But we also have some of the fire departments that don't like fire. They don't like PBAs. They don't like people setting fires. And so you have kind of a love-hate relationship. And we have it all the way to where we have volunteer fire departments that are very active and help all the PBAs. And actually here in Oklahoma, I have two PBAs that their presidents are actually the fire chief of their local fire department as well. So again, they pull double duty and they see the benefits of that. So it's just depends on the area and depends on an educational deal of it. The other thing is what a PBA does is it gives you strength in numbers. And that strength in numbers can change policy. It can possibly change law. Also, it can be a political benefit of what goes on. One of the examples of that would be I have a burn association in Western Oklahoma, and I was visiting with some members a few years back. We have here in Oklahoma, our county commissioners, people that are maintaining infrastructure within the county, they can put burn bans on. And this one burn association member was telling me, he said, yeah, if you'll watch our county, he said, we never have a burn ban. And I said, why is that? He said, well, they understand that fire is important and we need to burn. So he said, they won't enact it. And he said, plus, if they do, we'll find some new county commissioners, we'll vote them out. Because again, they have that political clout, they've got that strength in numbers that they can do. Also, again, it's an economic benefit, as just as I mentioned with the grants and things that are going on. And then the big thing is it's that risk management. You're managing that risk by helping each other burn and to do that and putting fire on the ground. The other thing too is, again, hopefully, you're helping to train future generations in the safe use of fire and that application of it, getting the kids out there to help. Again, that's important, because if that would have been going on years ago, I wouldn't be here talking to you now because everybody would understand what fire is, what the importance of it is, and would be doing it. And so we've lost that. We've lost that culture, and it's a generational gaps. And so we need to get that back, and that's a big part of it. If you look at it currently, again, prescribed burn associations, like I said, they're growing. The first one started in the late 90s. And then we would go to 2024. The latest number, these numbers are they're already behind. At the last count, we had 141 in 19 states now. Again, this model developed from the Southern Great Plains here of what we've done and getting that out. And so people are taking this same model and using it and getting it done. And it's seeing that it's very effective and it can work within that. Just to kind of change from the PBA model to a burn association model. So in 2011, a group of us, at that time we had 12 PBAs here in Oklahoma back in 2010, 2011. And we had about half of them were really active, doing a lot of stuff. The other 6 were floundering, needing help. And we were talking about what could we do to help these burn associations? What could we do to help form new ones and doing that? And so a group of us from PBAs as well as agency people across Oklahoma, we got together and we formed the Oklahoma Prescribed Burn Association. And again, our main goal was to work with the existing PBAs, try to find them funding, get them things that they needed so they could get more fire on the ground, and then to also form new ones. And again, like I said, currently we have 26 PBAs now in Oklahoma, and we're continuing to grow every day with new ones. And what the Oklahoma Prescribed Burn Association has been able to do, we're a 501c3 not-for-profit organization that's recognized by the IRS here in Oklahoma. We got filed with our Federal Communications Commission and got a statewide radio frequency. So that way, all the radios we buy for the PBAs and stuff, they're all on the same radio frequency. That way we can work and do through that. But probably the biggest thing is we started working on grants and stuff for the overall group. Because again, you have to think about it. A PBA is typically made up of landowners and folks that are managing land and doing that. They have other jobs, that's their job, and they don't have time to really write grants. And that's why, and to try to get funding, a lot of times they don't know where to go. They don't have the contacts that they need. And that's what we thought with the OPBA, we could do that. And it's worked. It's been a great model. And since 2012, we've received over $1.6 million in grants and contributions to help assist our burn associations. And 88% of this has been used for buying equipment or helping to pay coordinators that we started back in 2018 to help the burn associations even more. Again, our equipment, we set up those cargo trailers, buy other equipment as things need. We buy spray units. One of the biggest things we've done, I think we bought over 50 side-by-side 60-gallon spray units for that and distribute them to all the different burn associations around, so that they got, at least got a little bit of decent equipment that they can work with, and they can keep adding to it and things like that. And then our big thing was our coordinators that we started hiring. We just hired some part-time. They work as part-time labor. Most of them are retired NRCS employees that work around the state, or they work with a specific local PBA, and they try to help them. And just a little bit about the coordinators, who they are. They're just, like I said, they're part-time. We have 5 of them that we call kind of regional. They work with multiple different PBAs across the state. We have 4 of them that work just with the specific PBA that they're involved with. Since 2018, they've worked over 5,200 hours and drove over 92,000 miles. They've had over 1,200 total activities, and these activities would be site visits. They go out and help PBA members. They look at the land, help them to come up with a burn plan, what kind of fire breaks that are needed, talk to them with that. They also go out and help them burn. They attend meetings. They provide trainings within that. Again, they've worked with all the different PBAs. They've had over 973 PBA contacts. Since then, they've wrote over 114,000 acres worth of burn plans and assisted with almost 550 burns on almost 80,000 acres, and provided a lot of training events. And they also help get a lot of the landowner assistance programs that NRCS and other folks have, get those on the ground and get those projects and contracts all done up for those people. So again, they've been a big plus of getting things on the ground and helping new PBAs by providing people that have good experience and stuff to help them get out there and do that. Another thing that we have done, OPBA does have a website, and you can see here it's ok-pba.org, and on our website we have a lot of information about our PBAs here in Oklahoma, but we also have information about, examples of bylaws, guidelines, all that stuff. So again, like I said, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. You can, download a bylaw template and just fill in the blanks and edit it to whatever you want to do to fit your PBA and how you wanted to do it. But also what we have is we have what we call our prescribed burn entry form. And we started it in 2014. And what it is, it's a quick, about 20 question entry form that we're asking people to give us information about their burns that they conducted. We don't gather any personal information. We don't ask for any names, emails, phone numbers, anything. We just want to know what state the burn was conducted in, the county, the date, and other questions. We have about, like I said, about 20 questions about the burn. And again, this helps us get a track record of the burn associations and what they can get done and what they've done. Also, it helps us with our grants and stuff. We have great information on how many burns are conducted, how many acres were treated for what. And again, that helps us with our grants and stuff to give people that. And so from that survey, since 2014, we've had over 1,100 burns reported on over 310,000 acres that have been done. The average burn unit that our PBAs here in Oklahoma are burning is about 287 acres on average, with the smallest being 1 and the largest being over 13,000 acres in size. We have burns that are conducted every month of the year, and our growing season burns are becoming more and more popular and more common. And when I talk about growing season burns, I'm talking about burns from May till October, up in our part of the world here of that. And again, you can see this is just showing the acres burned by year. Again, it varies every year. It varies with with the weather, the conditions, the amount of fuel that's out there, if we're in a drought or if it's too wet and whatever. But the biggest thing is you can see that our number of acres getting burned every year is trending upward, and it's continuing to grow. And again, 2024 was our biggest year. We had with over 65,000 acres being reported from PBAs here in Oklahoma during that time frame on that. Again, this just shows again our number of burns that are conducted. Again, it varies just like the acres do, but you can see we're getting a lot of burns and a lot of activity and stuff as it goes, doing that. And our average burn unit size is also getting larger, slightly over the time. Again, I think as people see, it's easier to burn bigger units. People are starting pool land together to burn together to make burn units larger. So again, that's a lot of good stuff. And this is our burn activity by month. So we're seeing burning here, every month of the year. But again, our typical late winter, spring is our typical burn season, but that has been traditional within that. And you can see again, that's when February, March, and April, when most of our burns are being conducted and getting things done. But again, it's great to see that people are burning year round and getting those burns conducted. Because again, if you limit yourself to just a certain time of year that you're going to burn, you're not ever going to get everything done. You've got to be able to spread that burn season out and take advantage of other weather windows and other times of the year when you can get fire on the ground and get it done effectively on doing that. As I said, our growing season burns are getting more popular. Again, we're seeing that. Overall over the past 10 years, we're about 16% of all the burns are doing that. But you can see that by year, it's getting more and more, over 20% by year of what we can see and what we do. So that's a big part of it. Other things questions we ask is like how many people were on the burn and doing that. And what's really great is to see, our average crew size is 8.6, with 2 to 22 people being the range of that. The coolest thing is over that time period, there's been over 7,000 people participate in PBA burns. And so that's a huge impact of showing that there's a lot of people out there working and doing that. Our average crew size is staying about the same, around that 8-9 people on average of doing that. PBAs are increasing, we're seeing that. And so that's a great thing to see, and especially that many people working on that. Also, one of the questions we ask is again, why are you burning? You got to have a reason why you're burning. Here in our part of the world, Eastern red cedar control is our biggest thing. We're trying to control cedars. We're also trying to control other woody plants. And you can see that's 79 to 73% of all the burns that we do. Again, you may look at that and say, well, them all total over 100. Yeah, because again, you can burn for more than one reason, and everybody's burning for more than one reason. on doing that. Livestock production is still one of the leading, reasons that we're burning for doing that, but catching up really close behind it anymore is wildlife habitat. Also, people are seeing the benefit and putting that down is wildfire control, is we're going to manage wildfires with our prescribed fires, and that's a big part of it. And then training is listed as 33%, and that should be 100. Every burn is a training burn, no matter how many burns you've been on, but every burn's a training burn. Everybody should be learning from it. But again, we're seeing that as a huge part of it. Also, we ask people again what kind of conditions we're burning under. We're burning where it ranges from 106 degrees and 7% humidity and 35-mile-an-hour winds. That's the biggest range. And people look at that and say, oh my gosh, you can't do that. Well, no, you can't really burn under those conditions, but that's the extreme of all the range. And you can see our maximum minimum average temperature, we're burning between 69 and 56 degrees, humidities between 55 and 36, and winds between 13 and 6 miles an hour. On that, they're picking great conditions to burn under. And doing that, again, there are some burn units you can burn with more extreme conditions, again, because they're not going anywhere on that kind of stuff, and they've figured that kind of things out. And that kind of leads us into, what are we actually burning? And like I said, cedars are our biggest reason most people are burning. And so these burns are all being conducted with volatile fuels. Cedar is a very volatile fuel. It's pretty flammable most of the time. It has a great chance of great big flame lengths, throwing spot fires a great distance. So again, these folks are not out there just burning really light fuels, easy, simple stuff. They're burning some pretty complex stuff and getting it done. 80% of all the burns reported have cedar present. And again, you can see that through that graph as well, that it's increasing and the number of burns are increasing. But even with that, what really does it is the safety record. And so we ask everybody, was there a spot fire on the burn that you conducted? And a spot fire is defined in the question as any fire that left the burn unit, no matter what the cause, but you were able to extinguish it with the equipment and people on site. And then we also asked the question, was there an escaped fire? An escaped fire is any fire that leaves the burn unit, no matter what the cause, but they had to call for assistance to help put it out. So they had to call local fire departments to come help put it out. You can see our spot fire record's about 16%. So, 1 out of every 6 burns that gets conducted, there's going to be a spot fire. That's just part of burning, if you look at it. If you look at other records, most of them's up around 20% are spot fires by year. They're trending upward to a point, but why are they trending upward? It's because we're conducting more burns. The more burns you conduct, the more chances that there are going to be spot fires. But the deal is, remember, those are spot fires. Those are fires that get out of the unit, but they're handled by the people that are on site. It's just like riding a bicycle when you were a kid. The more you ride a bicycle, the more chance you are going to fall off. But you hop right back on and you keep going. The escape fires is what's great. Down to over the last 10-year period, it's 3%. Here in the last couple of years, you can see from the graph, it's down to 1% of all the fires that are being conducted. We have a chance of having an escape. And like I said, an escape is where they had to call for assistance to come help extinguish that. Again, that's trending way down. Again, we're burning more acres, we're conducting more burns, but we're seeing less and less escape fires. And again, 80% of all these burns have volatile fuels on them. So again, they're able to burn in some pretty extreme conditions with some pretty extreme fuels, and they're burning very safely and they're burning very effectively. If you look at it on that safety record, why are spot fires trending the way they are? Especially the escapes. I think, is it experience? Probably. We're seeing, older burn units or PBAs now that have got a lot of experience. Our crew sizes are staying the same. So that means maybe we're getting better. They're getting people are better trained. They're better equipped, better equipment. Uh, a lot of times we may be going from restoration burns to maintenance burns because a lot of these they're repeated burns on the same property, or all the above. So, those are some things, some questions we need to find out and get some answers from. But I like where things are going with what they've got. And then the thing is, we ask people what the size of the escapes are, because again, escapes or spot fires, and this is all lumped together. And you can see right here, that's where the big thing comes into, because again, people always talk about the fear of fire and that fear of liability, that if I conduct a fire, it's going to get out and it's going to burn the whole countryside up, and to do that. Well, that's the farthest from the fact. 94% of all these reported spot fires and escapes are less than 10 acres in size. And we've only had 2% that were greater than 100 acres. None reported that were over 1,000 acres with any deal on that. So again, I think that shows a great safety record, and again, helps to bust those myths that liability, that the fire's going to get out and burn up the whole countryside. It just isn't there. Again, you can see 70% or 69% of all of them are less than 1/10 of an acre. And that 1/10 of an acre is probably the size of a dinner table or smaller, is what the majority of them are. And so, that kind of stuff is important to get and important to have. Again, if you want to look at even more, we ask, was there any kind of insurance claims made against that? Over that time period, there have only been 4 burns reported that had any kind of insurance claims made against them, and there was also no large sum of money that we're not talking about multi-million-dollar lawsuits or insurance claims or anything like that. They were limited. One of them was actually, I know what one of them was some folks forgot that there was a telephone line junction box in the ditch, and they burned it up and melted all the wiring, and the telephone company sent them a bill for like $6,000, and they turned it over to their insurance on that. There have been 0 lawsuits filed against any PBA here in Oklahoma or against any burn that they've done. We also manage our smoke very well. We've had very little smoke issues or claims on or no claims on smoke or lawsuits or anything like that. Again, they're burning next to highways, they're burning next to towns and doing that. And they're doing a great job of managing their smoke and getting things done safely and effectively. And again, they can show that. And so, what has and what can a PBA accomplish? And again, what they do is they show that private landowners can and do effectively and safely burn and manage their land. That's a big part of it. The other thing is, again, they're showing that fire is not that liability risk that everybody thinks it is. That we've got a lot of that information and stuff out there that we like to share and to show people that, hey, it's not what you think it is. It's not going to turn into a big wildfire, because again, we pick the day, we pick the condition on what we can do and when we do it. And we got to remember, again, that fire should be an important part of all the management decisions that we make in doing that. And I'm a strong believer, you cannot have a grassland, a prairie, or even a forest without fire, because your grassland, rangeland, or prairie is going to become a woodland. That's what it's striving to be without fire. And a forest is going to be overran and overtaken by other things without fire. And so again, it's important to have that and to be able to do that big part of it within that. And so with that, that's kind of what I have. I guess I'll be glad to answer questions, have any kind of discussion with folks for sure.
Yeah, there's no questions in the chat. So, okay, first of all, I guess thank you, John, for that. There's no questions in chat, so if people want to unmute and ask a question, that'd be great.
hear all of that experience from Oklahoma. I have a question about training for members of the Prescribed Burn Association. So how do they get training?
How do you get training? It varies again with each group. A lot of times, a lot of somebody within that PBA has a little bit of experience with fire, and so they kind of lead and do that. Most of the people get pretty much kind of on the job training. Come and do whatever. Some of the PBAs have hosted little burn workshops where they bring other people in, and get people to show them techniques, how to do it. Again, they all, before the burn, they all go over what they're doing. They brief everybody and try to pair people up, especially people that don't have much experience with somebody that does, so they can kind of watch out for them, but they can also, explain to them what they are. Also, our coordinators have done a really good job. Again, all of them have good experience with fire, and so they've been a valuable training tool to do that. And again, a lot of our, fire's not difficult, and it shouldn't be difficult. A lot of times people think it's difficult, and a lot of times some of the agencies try to mystify it, and they try to think that they're the only ones that are smart enough to do it and that nobody else can. And that's just so far from the truth that it is. It's fire's not that difficult. I know people get tired of me saying it. I say it all the time that fire's not rocket science. Because number one, I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm as far from rocket scientist as you can be. And so if it was that difficult, I wouldn't be able to do it. And it's just putting a little bit of, prior thinking to it, applying a little bit of common sense, watching and learning how fire behaves is probably the biggest thing, and the biggest takeaway that you can get with burning is I encourage, and that's what when I teach people to burn and stuff, I encourage you, watch the fire, watch what burns, watch what doesn't burn, see how it behaves. That goes a long ways. You can learn a lot just by doing that, and so that's a big plus. So going back, the training just it goes. There's all kinds of different things that happen with training and stuff. A lot of them just get out there and go do it. They've been to a workshop or something. They've kind of seen that, and so again, they don't go out there and go try to light off, 3,000 acres and very difficult and complex burns. They'll go do small burns, get things going, and get an idea, and then gradually get bigger and bolder.
Right. No, that's really great. Thank you so much. Lori, I think we have another question there.
Yeah, it says, has the ability to get insurance increased with the creation of burn associations, or perhaps has the cost of insurance decreased?
The PBAs have kind of helped a little bit with insurance, but it's also it hasn't mattered. So the example I can give is I think it's about 7-8 years ago, we worked with a insurance company, and we were able to develop a nationwide insurance policy. It was for anybody. It was PBA members, anyone. We made it where it was just, available to anybody. And it was very, very affordable. If I remember right, it was $250. Actually, it was a $500 policy, and that would provide coverage for up to 2 burns. It was over $1 million insurance policy, so he had up to $1 million in coverage. It was really simple. You just had to have a written burn plan with a minimum requirement on the written burn plan, turn that in and do that, and you could do that. And so we got that policy developed nationwide. It lasted a year. The reason that they didn't sell enough policies, and that's the deal. I've done some research. We wrote a paper on looking at liability and risk, and to me, insurance is just an excuse people use not to burn. Because again, you can get people affordable insurance and do that, and they're going to come up with another excuse of why they're not going to burn. in that, because there are tons of people out there burning that have no specific standalone insurance. Yeah, they've got their farm and ranch liability policy within that and doing it. And so the insurance thing, I'm just not a big proponent of it. I try not to dwell on insurance, because if you dwell on insurance, you're just not going to get anything done. Now, if we can get more policies after, I'm all for it. I am for it, yeah, because again, if this will make people, do get more fire on the ground, I'm all for more fire on the ground for sure.
What is a typical membership size of a local PBA in Oklahoma? Do they typically expand and grow in size over time?
Yep. Typical, I would say probably an average is probably 30, uh, with ranging from probably 25 to, I think we've got some that are close to 75 people or so. I know one of the PBAs in Nebraska, I think they've got over 100 members, they're doing that. Most of the time you see, again, it depends on the leadership in the PBA. That's always a big case, but most of the PBAs grow, and a lot of times it's slow growth. Because again, a lot of times the neighbors will see, their neighbors burning, see the benefits of it, and go, "Hey, I want to be a part of it," and do that. And so you can do that. So, but a lot of times too, some of the PBAs are static. They gain as many members as they lose, as people get older and retire or pass away. They static, but a lot of times the new ones, they grow, they'll grow a little quicker early, and then they get to a point where they go.
I don't see any other questions, Lori, in the chat. Anybody else have? Oh, we have one question in the participants.
Hey there, John. I was just curious if there's any good handouts you thought would be beneficial at a first time meeting, as I'm trying to bring together some people in the community that are interested in fire. Are there any handouts you think that would be good for them to see that first time they sit down?
Yeah, Casey, good to hear from you. Yeah, we've got several from Oklahoma State here from our extension on PBAs. That's got a good thing that lists a lot of the stuff I talked about. Within that, there's a couple of really good ones on the Great Plains Fire Science Exchange about PBAs as well, and just also any fact sheets or information that can provide benefits of fire. Why you're burning, what you can do. We also have a couple of, again, Oklahoma State Extension fact sheets on risk and liability, and just the discussion of that. It's really good for people to uh, get that and help understand them, and maybe to understand that the risk is not as great as what they think, and what they see out there. Also, again, anything that has ecological benefits, I think, is good for people to help understand. And then fact sheets or information about, under what conditions do we burn under? What kind of prescriptions do we follow? What should we see? What kind of equipment and things like that.
Great, thank you. Not sure why my name is Casey. It's Carter Sargent. So we've met
No,
before.
no.
Thanks
Okay.
for hopping on today.
Yeah.
There is one question. It says, any guidance on getting a PBA started in an area with many overlapping government jurisdictions, indigenous governments and communities, private landowners, etc., diverse interests?
Yeah. Uh, we don't have as much, Oklahoma, we're a private land state. Most of the Great Plains is private land states, so we don't see that. But even here in Oklahoma, we've had some great partnerships with our PBAs. We have one in Southwest Oklahoma that borders a Fish and Wildlife Refuge. They work great together. Again, the PBA can't go on the refuge and help them burn, but the refuge folks can come help those burn. But a lot of times what happens is the landowners get with the refuge staff and they talk about what they're wanting to burn and what they're going to burn. And they kind of let their fires cross their boundaries and do and accept each other's fires. They've had great working with that. I've had that happen with the Corps of Engineers and stuff and some of the burn and landowners around here. I know they're getting, again, there's a lot more burn associations being established in the western states, especially California. And again, where they have that multi-jurisdictional area and they've had really good benefits of working with that. Again, a lot of it's just like even in a private land state, it's neighbors getting out talking to each other that don't happen all the time. And it's the same thing. You see that a lot that those agencies don't talk to each other, let alone talk to their neighbors, the private landowners. And that's what it's got to be is those agencies and those groups got to come together and start talking to each other because we're all there for the same reason. We're there for good land management. And you may have policy, that agency may have a policy that, hey, we really wish you could come on our property and help us burn, but you can't, but we will take your fire. Or if you would take our fire, we'll be glad to, work together to create bigger burn units, safer burn units. Don't work against each other, but work with each other.
I don't see more questions there. Any last minute question from the participants? Right. No, this is great, John. Lots of information. I think people may reach out to you. I don't know if you have any contact from yourself that people can reach out to you for questions if they have anything.
Yeah,
later.
I can put my email in the chat box.
That'll be appreciated.
Yep. If you have any kind of questions or anything within that, and I think Lori put OSU Extension fact sheet stuff and Great Plains Fire Science information stuff. So those are great sources of information and stuff.
Excellent.
So
all right. Okay, so I think we are wrapping up here. It's already past 11. So if there is no any more questions, I'm gonna thank you so much, John, for your time. This is really appreciated for sharing all that experience. I'm hoping that here in Canada we can start developing more prescribed burn associations, and of course, those guidelines will help a lot. I'm gonna say thank you as well to Lori and Carol from the Great Plains Fire Science Exchange and Kat sends to the from the Canadian Prairie Prescribed Fire Exchange to making these webinars possible. Over the next couple of weeks, already Kat sends posted in the chat that we're gonna have two other webinars related to prescribed burn associations, so you can follow up on that topic as well. So you are welcome to register for those as well. Thank you everyone to join us today and have a really great day.
thank you all, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thank you,
Thank
Roy
you,
and
John.
Kat.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.